I've been making storytime animations since before the genre even really had a name, and while I considered opening this video with a definition, I feel like there's always going to be exceptions, as well as things that don't technically fit, but most people would still consider part of the genre. So, keeping in mind how widely debated even the inclusion of animation in the name is, I'm just going to tell you that I'm mostly referring to this video structure of using an artwork of a character to represent yourself instead of a face cam, and generally using art or animation for the visuals instead of, I don't know, stock footage. And all of this is in reference to my own content only, okay? Okay. Let me tell you a secret. I've kinda hated the process of making storytime animations since the very beginning. I know why did and do I still make them if I supposedly don't like them? I'll explain that at the end, but first let me rant to you about why this genre frustrates me so much. In all honesty, some of my reasons are extremely minor and definitely a skill issue on my end, so I'm gonna go in order from least to most significant before ending with the reasons I keep going. Number 1. Having to draw backgrounds. Shock horror, character artist hates drawing backgrounds? No way. By the way, did you know that water is wet? Do not start debating that in my comments. I try to avoid drawing backgrounds to my videos as much as possible because they're incredibly unfun for me to draw, and they take so dang long for being on screen for about 2 seconds. Unfortunately, in some scenarios, it's unavoidably necessary to include a background if, let's say, the location is important to the story, or the characters need to interact with the background in some way. If you've ever wondered why the backgrounds that do exist in my videos are usually black and white, you may be surprised by how much extra time coloring these things in takes. Don't forget to multiply that by how many backgrounds you have in your entire 10-minute long video, and you're looking at potentially multiple days worth of extra work on something that very few people will even notice or care about. I think I would have quit after the second video if I put myself through that. Number 2. Sometimes you accidentally cover a topic that 1, 2, 5 other people have already made a video on. Yeah, this one is relatively low on the list because obviously it doesn't really matter. Like, of course in a genre about telling personal stories, there's gonna be a lot about playing sports at school or doing group projects. Most people went to school. But everyone still has a unique experience, and no 2 videos about the same subject will be exactly the same. That doesn't stop annoying commenters claiming that you stole from someone who just happened to talk about that topic before you, of course. Don't get me wrong, 90% of people fall into the "oh boy, 2 cakes" category, but there'll always be that one guy acting as though the guy who arrived at the table before you invented the concept of baking cakes and is actively offended that you dared steal their original idea. Number 3, the expectations. I've also put this one pretty low on the list because this one doesn't affect me as much as it did a few years ago. Basically, some people expect a little bit too much from storytime animators. It's always people who think they know a lot about animation, but in actuality vastly underestimate the amount of time and work that goes into it, especially for those of us who are a one-man team. As a people pleaser, I fell pretty hard into the trap of feeling the need to meet the expectations of people like that. Sure, people can criticize your work, but you have just as much of a right to not listen to or apply their critique. I distinctly remember once running out of time and not managing to add lip sync to my video. I was devastated and extremely apologetic. That video went on to do even better than the previous lip sync one. That's when I realized people aren't watching because my talk sprites have lip sync. Sure, some people probably notice and appreciate it, and I don't doubt that for some viewers my animation quality is pretty high on their reasons why they watch my videos. And I also still put in extra effort on the animation side of things when I have the time because it's fun and a passion of mine. But I think the meat of storytime animation is always the storytelling first, and spending days of extra time on hundreds more frames of a video that most people are going to watch in the background, just to please one person who will probably still think it's not smooth enough, is a waste of time that you could be using on more effective ways to make your videos more entertaining. Receiving unhelpful comments about how I need more frames or more colors or whatever is annoying, but it's become a lot easier to deal with by focusing on why people actually watch my stuff, and learning how to separate critiques that are actually useful and reasonable from those who unironically expect Studio Ghibli level animation from one guy with a 1-month deadline. Number 4. I am restricted to real life. I've only ever told truthful stories in my storytime animations, at least to the best of my memory. And I'm not gonna lie, I sometimes wonder if I would have more fun with it if I'd have made an entirely separate character from myself and written fictional stories that seem plausible but aren't actually stuff that actually happened to me. And honestly, as long as you're not hurting anyone with misinformation or something, I don't really fault people who do that. I mean, yeah, I could literally start doing that right now. It's not like you can verify most of my stories anyway, but I don't know. At this point, it just feels wrong to suddenly start spicing up my videos with fiction, especially since I've covered topics like mental health before. Yeah, combining serious mental health discussion with fictional stories and presenting them as true, I hope it's obvious enough why that's a line you should never cross. In my case, I just started using an entirely different format when I feel like creating something that isn't confined to the restrictions of reality. It's a lot more work because it's more like a full cartoon than a storytime animation with the talk sprites and stuff, so they have to be shorter, but it's refreshing. Like, I love animation, and I often find that storytime animation doesn't allow me to get particularly creative with it. I do try to find ways to exaggerate expressions or animate mundane things in a unique way, but there's often a lot of, like, characters just walking around. There'll usually be a handful of scenes in a storytime that are really fun and exciting to draw, but kind of like how sometimes having to draw backgrounds is inevitable, there's often a lot of setup needed to get to those fun parts that's kinda mundane to work on in comparison. Honestly, I think making cartoons in between my storytime content is part of how I've been able to avoid burnout in my 8 years of doing this, and I recommend it if you're a storytime animator who feels the need to flex their creativity more than the storytime genre allows. Number 5. Technical difficulties. So, I like to build my videos like a house, starting with the foundation first and building it up layer by layer rather than going from start to finish. I found this approach helps keep me in check in terms of not overdoing things. In the past, I've gone all out on the visuals in the first minute of a video, only to realize that it's gonna take me months to finish if I keep up that level of detail. So, by building up the entire length of the video, I'll essentially reach kind of like a minimum point where the whole video is technically done and I could publish it if I wanted, but if I have extra time, I can go in and add extra details. I'm also painfully indecisive and like to keep my videos as modular as possible. By that I mean keeping my layers as separate as I can, so I can go back in and add or tweak things easily at any point in the video making process. The problem is my PC hates that I do this. It does not like my millions of layers and all of my uncompressed effects and filters attached to all of those layers. One solution to this, of course, is to already export the parts of your video that are done, so it's no longer a huge mass of layers and effects, but a small and tidy singular video clip. But since I work on the entire length of the video rather than from start to finish, I rarely have 100% complete sections of video until the very end. I could have put this point earlier, it definitely has skill issue energy. I know I need to switch programs, it's just, we've been together for so long, she used to be so good to me. Surely things will get better, marriage will solve everything, right? But technical issues in general during the video making process just make it so much more frustrating and almost only ever happen to me while making storytime animations. Number 4. Length. Yeah, sure, making 2-minute long storytime animations is probably possible, but my scripts always turn out at 5 minutes minimum. Forgive me, for I cannot restrain the yap. When they get this long, it gets very, very tiring listening to myself over and over. I don't know if anyone else has this issue, but with bigger projects like this where you're spending a lot of time with the same script, visuals, and audio, it becomes really hard for me to see the whole video objectively, if that makes sense. Like, I start feeling like the script is super boring, and I have to keep reminding myself that 1, I'm overly critical of myself, and 2, I've read and listened to it over 100 times. Of course it's gonna get boring. I try not to work on one video for longer than a month because around the end of it, all of this self-doubt starts to seep in and it gets really hard for me to push through and reach the finish line. And yeah, I need an entire month for a storytime video like this. As I touched on earlier, I am one guy. And my upload schedule is only even possible because I've spent all of these years learning the best ways to optimize my workflow. I considered making this a separate section, but since it's relevant to this one, I'll just include it here. Storytime animators don't actually earn that much in comparison to other channels of the same size. Because these types of videos take so long to make, I can only manage monthly uploads, and these monthly uploads can't be too long, meaning less opportunities for ad space. Bigger channels are able to offset the discrepancy if they get a lot of views, and put that extra income to hire additional animators to help them make longer, more frequent, and / or more visually appealing videos. Personally, I'm stuck without the financial means of hiring assistants, but in all honesty, even if I could, I don't know if my possessiveness over my own work would let me. 6. Having to make all your visuals from scratch. Why does it take so long though? Well, Storytime Animation is not like making a vlog, where you just record a video of yourself talking and add in some stock images or footage when needed. So, what do you put on screen? If not all, you have to make most of your visuals from scratch, which of course has the advantage of not having to painstakingly search for the perfect stock image to match your very specific story, only to find that it costs $300 to license. But all of that drawing takes so much time. And like with the backgrounds, it's an inevitability that some of that drawing is going to be very repetitive and / or stuff that you don't particularly enjoy. I'm gonna be totally honest with you, I sometimes have genuinely no idea what to draw in some scenes. The whole video will be some of the most creative stuff I've come up with, and then there'll be a solid 20 seconds of blank space that's once again, necessary exposition, but my brain has no idea what to do with it visually. That's another reason for my technique of building up my videos layer by layer. If I work my butt off on 5 minutes worth of animation, I do not want to get stuck at a 20-second long section, unable to progress until I come up with something to fit in there. The way I structure the making of my videos means I can work on the sections I feel most creatively motivated to do first, which usually gives me enough time and warm up to fill in those less obvious parts later. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, man, this would be so much easier if I had a video of what happened instead of having to draw and animate it all. Number 7. Parasociality. When you're creating content about yourself, you're unavoidably going to create this imbalance between the information a viewer knows about you versus what you know about them, which is fine on its own, and as I said, unavoidable, but unfortunately some people forget that this imbalance is there, as well as the fact that, as a creator, you're choosing which bits of information about yourself to put out there and which to conceal. So you get these people who think they know you, and I don't think it's really an issue to relate to a creator because you share similar traits or struggles, but it gets very uncomfortable when people start to assume things about you based on what they've seen in your videos. This is a fairly inconsequential example, but I'm kind of surprised by how many people were shocked by how sociable I was when meeting me at conventions. And I can only deduce that from being open about my social anxiety online, people just expect me to be shy and reserved in person. I think the most frustrating case of this is people feeling the need to try and protect me from loud situations, extroverted people, even like adult humor. And I don't know how to communicate to people that my videos, even me on my live streams, is not the full picture. And it never will be, because I have the right to separate some aspects of my personal life from my public self. Seeing people constantly infer things about me based on what I did or didn't say in a YouTube video is so uncomfortable. And I could go on, but I realize that this point, while common within the Storytime community, extends to almost every genre, so perhaps it's a topic best left to a separate video. So why do I still do it if I hate it this much? I'm gonna hijack the positive section of this video to add in one more minor but relevant negative, which is that I always feel pressured to include disclaimers and clarifications for absolutely everything. I tend to picture the reaction of the person watching as I'm writing, and right now I'm imagining tons of people yelling, "Just stop making Storytime animations if you hate them so much." Like, is it not really obvious that I've spent 8 years of my life making Storytime animations? Because I'm deeply passionate about it despite my grievances with this style of content. I have video editing experience. I could easily be out here making top 10 videos or some other type of content that is much quicker and easier to make. And I'd probably be a lot more financially stable right now. So why animation? I don't know, but I feel like it should be extremely obvious without me having to make a top 10 reasons why I love Storytime animation follow-up video. Sure, I could, but maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think it's really necessary. I think, like most art-based styles of video, it's pretty clear that the people who are doing it out of a sense of passion and personal interest in the medium. While the negatives, on the other hand, are probably something most people don't really know or think about. Or maybe you do, and you found this list relatable. I'm a chronic overthinker, and maybe that's affecting my view on this, but truthfully, I do feel an expectation to never be too negative, even when I'm covering a serious topic. And in the case of videos like this in particular, I do think that a lot of people jump to the conclusion that the creator is just being overly negative about something that they could easily just avoid. Let's be real, there are a lot of videos like that on this platform. But critiquing something doesn't mean that you have absolutely no positive feelings or connection to it whatsoever. I realize my title is provocative, but it's honestly genuinely how I feel. I kinda hate it, but I also love it, so I keep doing it, despite my program crashing every 5 minutes because I refuse to learn how to optimize my files or just use an objectively better program. I actually think it's pretty important to acknowledge when there are negative things about things you like, particularly in relation to Storytime Animation. While this video is about me and my personal experiences with it, I also hope that it might help you understand why so many Storytime animators get burnt out and suddenly disappear even when it seemed like things were going well for them. Support animators. My Patreon is a really good way to support me if you want to help me make more Storytimes and the like, and help me solve some of the things I struggle with. Or you can become a channel member. You just get a funny cat next to your name and can use emotes in my comments. But it's only $1, and the more members we have, the more emotes I can add. I also want to quickly remind you that I've been working on an indie game. We want to release it very soon, but we need more support. I'd really appreciate it if you'd add it to your Steam wishlist, even if you're more interested in the Switch version, as wishlists help us out a ton. I'll also leave some social links of the lead developer in the description if you're interested in learning more about the game. Now I'll go back to making Storytime Animation so I can collect more reasons to hate this terrible genre no one should ever get into or watch ever. Insert evil laugh here.